I never thought I'd be the kind of person to hold a grudge. I used to believe that family always had each other's backs, no matter what. That's what I was raised to think. But when I needed them the most, my so-called family turned their backs on me without a second thought. It all started 3 years ago when my life fell apart overnight. One moment, I was healthy, working a stable job, and planning my future. The next, I was lying in a hospital bed, staring at medical bills that I had no way of paying. The doctors told me I needed urgent treatment, and without insurance, I was drowning in debt before I could even process what was happening. But I wasn't alone, right? I had family. My relatives were well off. Some were even wealthy. My uncle ran a successful business. My cousin bragged about her multiple investment properties. And my parents, well, let's just say they were never shy about reminding me how comfortable they were in retirement. So, I swallowed my pride and reached out. I wasn't asking for charity. I made it clear. I just needed a loan, something to help me stay afloat until I recovered and got back on my feet. I even offered to sign an agreement, pay interest, whatever it took. I thought they'd understand. I thought they'd care. But instead, they gave me the same response over and over. We have our own lives to deal with. Some of them ignored me completely. Others sent vague, dismissive texts. And a few had the audacity to lecture me about financial responsibility before telling me they just couldn't afford to throw money away. Throw money away. These were the same people who posted pictures of their expensive vacations, their designer shopping sprees, their new cars and remodeled homes. And yet, when I was struggling just to afford basic treatment, they acted like I was a burden. I was devastated. But more than that, I was angry. Still, I managed. I did what I had to do. I picked up extra work when I was physically able. I fought with the hospital over bills, and I got through it without them. It wasn't easy, but I survived. And over time, that anger I felt toward them, it didn't fade. It sharpened. It had been over 2 years since my so-called family turned their backs on me. By then, I had rebuilt my life on my own. It wasn't easy. There were nights when I went to bed hungry, days when I thought I wouldn't make it. But I kept pushing forward. I worked relentlessly, taking any job that would help me stay afloat. I taught myself new skills, found remote work, and slowly climbed my way out of the financial pit I had been left in. Every dollar I made felt like a victory, a reminder that I had survived despite them. And then, one day, I got a message that it was from my cousin, one of the first people I had reached out to when I was desperate. The same cousin who had sent me a 2-sentence text telling me that times are tough for everyone while posting pictures of her luxury vacation in Greece. I stared at her name on my phone, feeling something bitter rise in my throat. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened the message. Hey, it's been forever. Hope you're doing well. Listen, I really need a favor, and I know you're great with finances. Can we talk? I almost laughed out loud. A favor? From me? After all this time? I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I let the message sit there while I leaned back in my chair, thinking that first. I figured it was some minor inconvenience. Maybe she needed help budgeting for her next shopping spree. But something about her tone seemed off. There was a nervousness in it, a hesitation that she wasn't usually the type to have. I decided to do a little digging. A quick search on social media told me everything I needed to know. My cousin had made some bad investments. She had stretched herself thin, buying properties she couldn't afford, and now that the market had taken a downturn, she was bleeding money. That was satisfying enough on its own. But then I saw something else. My uncle, the one who had built a wildly successful business, the one who had given me a condescending speech about standing on my own 2 feet, had filed for bankruptcy. That I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling a cold, creeping sense of amusement settle over me. It was all falling apart for them. The same people who had refused to lift a finger when I was drowning were now struggling to stay afloat themselves. And they had the nerve to ask me for help. I didn't respond to my cousin right away. Instead, I waited. I wanted to see just how desperate they were willing to get. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was my uncle. The man who had ignored my calls when I was begging for help was now calling me. I let it ring for a while before finally answering, keeping my voice neutral. Hey, uncle. It's been a while. There was a long pause on the other end. like he was struggling to find the right words. Finally, he cleared his throat. Yeah, it has. Listen, I won't waste your time. We're in a bit of a tough spot right now, and I was wondering if you'd be willing to help out. I almost wanted to drag it out, to play dumb, to make him say it. But I already knew what he wanted. Help out how? I asked, keeping my tone light. He hesitated. Well, you've always been smart with money, and I know you've been doing well for yourself. We just need a little support to get back on our feet. We, the same we that had left me to suffer alone. I leaned back in my chair, feeling something cold and sharp settle in my chest. This was it. This was the moment I had dreamed about for years, and I wasn't about to waste it. Oh, I'd love to help, I said, letting just a hint of amusement creep into my voice. But, I have my own life to deal with. Silence. Pure, beautiful silence. I could hear him processing my words, could almost feel the moment he realized I was throwing his own excuse back in his face. But I wasn't done yet. Besides, I continued, I wouldn't want to throw money away. I could hear his breath hitch. That was exactly what he had told me years ago when I was desperate for help. He stammered for a moment, trying to recover. Look, I know things were rough before, but this is different. We're family. Oh, now we're family? I interrupted, my voice turning cold. Funny, I don't remember feeling like part of a family when I was in the hospital, wondering how I was going to survive. Another pause. Then, finally, he muttered, I see how it is. I smiled to myself. Yeah, I guess you do. And with that, I hung up. But this wasn't over yet, because the begging was only just beginning. Hanging up that call felt like winning a battle I had been fighting for years. But I knew it wasn't over. No, this was just the beginning. Because when people like my family fall, they don't go down quietly. They scramble, they claw, they beg, but only when they realize they have no other options. And suddenly, I was their only option. See, what my uncle said was true. I was doing well for myself, better than well. I had spent the last 2 years grinding, working harder than I ever had in my life. After clawing my way out of medical debt, I made a promise to myself. I would never be that vulnerable again. I became obsessed with learning everything I could about money, investments, passive income, building a business. I threw myself into it like my life depended on it. And in a way, it did. It wasn't easy. I sacrificed sleep, relationships, and any semblance of a social life. While my so-called family was still flaunting their lifestyles on social media, I was studying late into the night, working every side hustle I could find. And then, one day, it all paid off. I cracked the code. I started a business. One that took off faster than I could have imagined. The same skills I had begged my family to teach me, I taught myself. And the money started coming in. Slowly at first, but then, it snowballed. Soon, I wasn't just financially stable. I was wealthy, and my family, they noticed. They noticed when I stopped struggling, when I started traveling, when I moved into a nicer place, upgraded my car, and, oh, the irony, when I started posting pictures of my success. At first, they watched from a distance. I could feel their curiosity through their awkward likes and half-hearted comments. But then, one by one, they started reaching out. It started subtly, casual messages, pretending to check in after years of silence. My parents sent a "hope you're doing well" text out of nowhere. My cousin, the one who had once dismissed me with a vague excuse, suddenly wanted to reconnect, and then, when their financial troubles started catching up to them, the messages got desperate. They weren't just checking in anymore. They needed something. And for the first time, they realized I had something they wanted. That's why my uncle called me. That's why my cousin had messaged me out of nowhere. They had spent their entire lives looking down on me, treating me like I was disposable. But now, I had something they couldn't ignore, and they thought I was going to save them. But they had no idea just how much I had changed. I wasn't the same person who had begged them for help all those years ago. I wasn't the desperate, struggling relative they could ignore. Now, I was the one with the power. And I was about to make damn sure they felt it. Because the next time they called me, I had plans for how that conversation was going to go. When the phone rang again, I wasn't surprised. This time, it was my mother. Now, let me be clear. My parents weren't destitute. They weren't on the streets. They weren't in any real danger. But for the first time in their lives, they were feeling the kind of financial stress that I had begged them to help me with years ago. And suddenly, all those times they told me, "We have our own lives to deal with," didn't seem to apply anymore. I let the phone ring. Once, twice, point three times, then I picked up. "Hello?" I said, my voice calm, controlled. There was a pause. Then, my mother's voice, overly sweet, too sweet. "Sweetheart, it's been so long. How are you?" She sounded like a stranger, like a woman who had never once let me struggle alone. Even though I knew for a fact that's exactly what she had done, I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch, just long enough for it to become uncomfortable. Then I said, "What do you want?" I could hear her falter. That wasn't the response she had been expecting. "Oh, honey, I just wanted to check in. See how my successful son is doing. I saw your pictures. You look great, really. We're all so proud of you." I almost laughed. Proud? Proud. Where was this pride when I was drowning in medical bills? Where was this concern when I needed them the most? But I wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of knowing I cared. "I'm doing well," I said simply. "But you didn't call just to say that. What's going on?" Another pause, and then her voice softened, became more fragile. "Well, things have been difficult lately. You know how the economy is. Your father's investments took a hit, and, well, you know how expensive things are these days. It's been a little tight." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. "So?" There was a sharp inhale, like she couldn't believe I was making her spell it out. "Well, I just thought maybe you could help us a little." There it was, the moment I had been waiting for. The same people who had turned their backs on me when I was at my lowest were now coming to me with their hands out, expecting me to fix their problems. I could have given them the money. Easily, I could have bailed them out with a single wire transfer. And that's exactly what they were banking on, that I would be too kind, too soft, too guilty to turn them away. But they had no idea how much I had changed, so I smiled, and I said, "No." Silence. Then, my mother let out a nervous laugh, like she thought she had misheard me. "Honey, what do you mean, no?" I leaned forward, gripping the phone a little tighter. "I mean, no, Mom. I'm not helping you." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. But we're family." That? That almost made me snap. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. "Oh, now we're family?" I said, my voice quiet but sharp. Where was that attitude when I needed help? When I was drowning in medical debt, and you all acted like I didn't exist? "That was different," she protested. "We were busy. We had your own lives to deal with." I finished for her. There was nothing but silence. And for the first time in my life, I realized something. They didn't regret what they did. They weren't sorry. They just hated that the roles had reversed, that I now held the power. And I wasn't going to let them use me, so I took a deep breath and said, "I learned a lot when I was struggling, Mom. I learned who I could count on, and who I couldn't." Then, before she could say another word, I hung up. And as I put the phone down, I realized something else. I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. Because for the first time in my life, I was truly free. But little did I know, my family wasn't done yet. They weren't going to take no for an answer. And what they did next would prove just how desperate they really were. I should have expected it. I should have known that a simple no wasn't going to be enough for people like them. Because when entitled people lose control, they don't accept it. They don't take the loss with dignity. No, they try harder. And that's exactly what my family did. It started with messages. At first, they came from my mother. "Mom, I don't understand why you're being like this. We're family. Families support each other. Mom, this isn't fair. We helped raise you. You wouldn't be where you are without us. Mom, just think about it, okay? Don't let resentment cloud your heart." I ignored them. Every single one. Then my uncle joined in. "Uncle, heard you're too good for your own family now? Uncle, money changes people. Just don't forget where you came from." That one made me laugh. Where I came from? The struggle I had to go through? They had the nerve to act like they had any part in my success when they had left me to rot. I didn't even bother responding. And then the messages changed. They weren't polite anymore. Mom texted, I can't believe you're this selfish. We're struggling and you just sit there doing nothing? Then she texted again, you're rich now. It's just money. You wouldn't even miss it. Cousin texted, wow, really? After everything? You're disgusting. I could feel their anger through the screen, their desperation leaking into their words. And then came the guilt trip messages from Mom. Your father isn't well. The stress is affecting his health. I hope you can live with yourself when something happens to him. That one made me pause. Not because I believed her. No, I knew my father. He was fine. But the fact that she would go that far to manipulate me, it was pathetic. And it told me one thing. They weren't just struggling. They were sinking. But nothing prepared me for what came next. Because they stopped with the messages. And they started showing up. It happened on a quiet afternoon. I had just come back from a meeting, feeling good about how things were going. Business was thriving. I had some major deals in the works, and for the first time in years, I felt completely in control of my life. Then the doorbell rang. I checked the security camera on my phone, and there they were. My mother, my father, and my uncle, standing outside my home. They had never been here before. They had never even asked where I lived. But here they were, on my doorstep. I let out a slow breath, staring at the screen. I could see it in their faces, the forced smiles, the tension in their eyes. They weren't here to talk. They were here to corner me, and I wasn't going to let it happen, so I did what they never expected. I ignored them. I watched as my mother rang the bell again, then knocked, then started calling my name. I watched as my father crossed his arms, clearly irritated. I watched as my uncle pulled out his phone, probably to call me. Another call I wouldn't answer, and then I turned off the camera, and I let them stand there. Because if they had taught me anything, it was that sometimes the best response is silence. But they weren't done, no, not yet. Because the next thing they did would prove just how far they were willing to go. I let them wait 0.5 minutes, then 10, then 15. I wondered how long they'd last before they gave up. Before they realized that the son, the nephew, the relative they had tossed aside like trash wasn't going to roll over just because they finally needed something from him. But they didn't leave. Instead, my mother pounded on the door harder. We know you're in there, she shouted. Stop being childish and come talk to your family. I clenched my jaw.my family. That word meant nothing coming from them. But you know what? Fine, if they wanted to talk so badly. If they wanted their big moment, then I'd give it to them. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and stepped outside. The second I opened the door, my mother's face twisted into a look of exaggerated relief, like she hadn't been just moments away from screaming. Finally, she huffed. Why were you ignoring us? I folded my arms. Because I don't owe you anything. And I figured if I ignored you long enough, you'd get the message and leave. Her mouth fell open slightly, as if she couldn't believe I was actually saying it. My father scoffed. What kind of way is that to talk to your parents? I turned my gaze on him. The same way you talked to me when I begged for help, and you said you had your own life to deal with. That shut him up. My uncle stepped in then, clearing his throat, clearly trying to smooth things over. Look, kid, we know things were rough before, but what's done is done. Right now, we're in a difficult situation and you think I care? I cut him off, raising an eyebrow. He blinked at me. You think you can show up here? I continued, voice calm but sharp, after turning your backs on me when I was desperate, when I was suffering, and expect me to just open my arms and say, oh sure, here's all the money you need, no problem. My mother pursed her lips. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. I snapped. I could feel the years of anger, the pain, the betrayal boiling inside me, rising to the surface like a dam about to break. Do you have any idea what I went through? I demanded. Do you even care? Do you know how many nights I spent in agony, wondering how I was going to survive? Wondering if I'd even make it? While you, all of you, sat in your comfortable homes and didn't lose a wink of sleep over it. My mother shook her head. That's not fair. No, I snapped, voice low but furious. What's not fair is me nearly dying while my rich family pretended I didn't exist. What's not fair is watching the people who were supposed to love me turn their backs without a second thought. Silence. They had nothing to say to that. because deep down, they knew I was right, but I wasn't done. And now? I continued, eyes burning into them. Now you need me. Now you're struggling. And suddenly, family matters again? I let out a bitter laugh. Well, let me be crystal clear. I stepped closer, lowering my voice just enough to make sure every single word hit like a hammer. You didn't care about me when I needed you, so I don't care about you now. My mother's face twisted into an ugly scowl. You're being cruel. No, I said coldly. I'm being fair. She opened her mouth to argue again, but I was done. I turned on my heel, walked back inside, and slammed the door shut behind me. And for the first time in years, I felt free. They pounded on the door a few more times, shouted my name, called me selfish, heartless. I didn't care. I just stood there, breathing deeply, feeling the weight of their presence slowly fade. And then, silence. I checked the camera. They were gone. They never reached out again after that. Maybe they finally understood that I wasn't going to be their safety net. Maybe they moved on to try and leech off someone else. Either way, it didn't matter, because I had already given them my answer, and I would never, never look back.
I think this is a clear example of how selfishness can destroy family bonds. The protagonist was left to struggle on their own, and when they finally found success, their family came crawling back. It's frustrating to see how people can only care when it benefits them, but the protagonist's decision to stand firm and not give in was a smart one. At some point, you have to prioritize your own well being, especially when those around you have shown they're only interested in what you can do for them. Sometimes saying no is the best way to protect yourself. What do you think? Was the protagonist right to cut them off, or should they have helped? Let me know in the comments.